Today at Blenheim Palace, a meeting, yes, a big get-together of the European political community. This, it will not surprise you to know, is something that doesn't exactly thrill me. Well, joining me to discuss this in the studio in London is Sir George Howarth, former Labour MP, and Baroness Foster, life peer and a former member for the Conservative Party of the European Parliament. So a lot of discussion, folks, today about doing a pact with Europe where they might take some of our cross-channel illegal migrants and we might send some back the other way. George Howarth, it seems to me that if Keir Starmer was to enter into this, we'd probably end up receiving more people under this deal than we'd send the other way.
Well, I don't know what the basis for you being able to say that is, Nigel, but I think everybody sensible would accept that we have to have sensible agreements with, first of all, France, because that is where most of them are coming from as the last port of call. And secondly, we have to have agreements with either bilaterally or by other means with the rest of Europe. And we've been saying that as a party for a long time. Yvette Cooper's been saying it. And I think that is the best way forward.
Well, we'll find out. And interestingly, Border Force took a boat back today. I'm going to come back to you on that in just a moment, because one of the things, George, one of the things that Starmer did say at Blenheim Palace is under no circumstances will Labour leave the European Convention on Human Rights and its associated court in Strasbourg. But what is interesting is overnight we get the news that Border Force picked up a Mayday call, picked up a group of migrants in the Channel and took them not back to Dover but put them into Calais. Do you think this was a political decision? Could this be actually the way that we do solve the problem?
To be honest, Nigel, I'd be speculating if I was to say it was a political decision. However, I think the tone that Keir and Yvette Cooper have both set since the election is that we're not going to tolerate it. We're going to deal with the problem, whether it's within Europe or, as the announcement said today, in the sources of initial migration in the Middle East and Africa. And so I think the tone may have emboldened the Border Force to do what they did. But also, I think it's important that it also shows if we get cooperation with France, there is a real prospect that we can deal with this problem in a way that would be effective.
Interesting word, Jackie Foster. You know, at no point since 2018, when the boats started coming, first slowly and then rapidly after 2020, at no point during a Tory government were any migrants taken by boat back to France. Are Labour now beginning to beat you on this argument?
I wish I could say yes. And obviously it's early days and congratulations to them. But the European Union, there's always a quid pro quo. And whatever they agree, I think the point you raised at the beginning about any deals that are done, would we then end up having to take in illegal immigrants from the rest of the European Union? From my point of view, that's a non-starter. I think in addition, Keir Starmer also said he was going to give them another 84 million. Well, we've already given France about £500 million of taxpayers' money, and they've done absolutely nothing, frankly, over the last couple of years. You raised the point about the boat that turned round today and took these illegal immigrants back to Calais. My question then would be, well, why haven't they been taking them back to Calais for the last 2 or 3 years? So I'd like an answer to that. I do wish them well. Your point on the ECHR, I think, is very valid. I think the ECHR, I think it's out of date. And in terms of the legislation that we did pass, and we really tried to get good legislation through over the last 2.5 years, and we were actually thwarted at every quarter, whether it was the Rwanda bill or whether it was the illegal immigration bill, by the opposition parties, frankly, to put safeguards in to try and get to the bottom of this. They've apparently now been pretty well ripped up. So I wish the Labour Party well. But But this is not going to be, there's no quick fix in all of this. And obviously what we have in all of this is this great tragedy of people who basically are trafficked and those that lose their lives. And that's been one of our biggest points. We shouldn't be having people losing their lives. There are legal ways to get into the United Kingdom. And many people come into the United Kingdom legally. And they don't need to have their lives threatened. And we know this is all about gangs. We are part of Interpol. We're part of all of these bodies that are trying to stop this. Where will the Labour Party, where they're going to deport their illegal immigrants to? Because they've thrown Rwanda out, the baby out with the bathwater. Yet there's other countries in the European Union
Jackie,
looking for countries to send them to.
Hang on, Jackie. If Border Force start taking migrants back to France, they will stop paying they'll stop paying traffickers. George, I must ask you one other thing that's been raised. David Lammy seems particularly keen that we sign up close to, although he's not been explicit about joining, a European defence union. How on earth can we reinforce NATO, strengthen our relationship with NATO, and at the same time be prepared to take orders potentially from a separate command centre in Brussels? That's my big worry on defence.
Well, look, I mean, first of all, I think it is important that if you look at Ukraine, and you and I probably differ on this, but if you look at Ukraine, it is clear that we need European defence systems that thwart the territorial ambitions of Putin. And secondly, there are common security issues which need to be discussed. But, of course, NATO will always take precedence over everything else. So I don't have any worries on that part. David Lammy has proved in the period when he's been Shadow Foreign Secretary that he's a patriot, but also that he wants to make sure our relationships with the rest of the world, including on security, are properly founded and properly carried out.
All right. OK. Well, Jackie, George sees no conflict here between being part of NATO and potentially tying up close to the European Defence Union. What do you say?
I think you've got to have a look. You have to have a look at the detail. I mean, you know, and I know, we were in the European Union, in the Parliament for the same time, and there was always this push, wasn't there, to common foreign and security policy and defence. And of course, you know, we've got two nuclear powers, obviously with France and then obviously with the United Kingdom. Although France left NATO for a number of years and then came back. You know, NATO is the kingpin, and what's important is actually where you are, and it's who's going to be the next president of the United States, in my view. And of course we do have a very good relationship, frankly, with the European Union. It's not just the EU, it's the whole of the ECAC, the 44 European countries. We are at one, but there's all sorts of manoeuvres and exercises that go on jointly, and there's fantastic cooperation. But what I want to see now is I want to see strong leadership in Europe, and I certainly want to see, and I hope you send in my very best wishes to our sister party, the Republicans, to Donald Trump, and I hope he is successful in the election later this year, because we need a really strong voice and a strong leader in North America and in the certainly in the USA.
Well, I'm not sure many of your Conservative colleagues would call the current Republicans a brother or sister party, but I'll find out more when I speak to delegates later on here today. We're going to take a break, but then we're going to come back.